Record to. Okay, there you go. And then I'm going to make sure that there's no more participants at this time sitting in the wings here.
Okay.
Nope, everybody is in at this time here, so I'll turn the host back over to you. And then sorry for the break in that process. There you go, Janice. Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to share my slides, and hopefully I'll be able to control it a little bit. I don't see. What do you see? Do you see my outline and not the slides?
We see the top portion of your slides. It is in full screen yet, though.
Yeah, I'm not able to get it to go to full screen. Maybe I'll stop sharing and try to get this right screen back up.
There you go. Yeah, keep playing away with it. It worked fine an hour ago, Janice. I don't know what we did.
Yeah, so I'll try one more time.
Sometimes it's helpful to have that as the only thing that's open on your computer. Because a lot of times hit the share button, it will offer every single screen and it will play off of how your screen is set up. So if your screen is set up as a minimized or smaller version, it will show that to the rest of us the same way.
Okay, yeah, what didn't operate that way at practice. So anyway, we'll see what happens now.
Yeah, so now your microphone went mute again, Janice.
Okay, hopefully I'm back.
You are, yes.
And I will try to share the, do you see the slides?
We do, but you have to go into slideshow yet.
I hope it lets me. Yes, it did. Yay. I kind of talked about this already. The topic that I'm covering tonight, reading, beading, and believing, a librarian's journey. So I have already introduced myself with my Hoocak name, Hinuk Wijawi, and I can hear somebody else talking. So somebody might need to mute. Sounds like a TV. Hinuk Wijawi is my Hoocak name, and it's a Bear Clan name, and it means changing seasons woman. And it refers to how the bear is all season long, changing and then hibernating in winter. So that's kind of how that name came about. And there's a lot of other Hoocak women in Nebraska that have that name, but I have not heard of any other Hoocak Bear Clan members in Wisconsin who have that same name. So I'm going to go to the next screen and just kind of tell you a little bit more about who I am. On my left, on the left screen, is my father and mother, Ruby Little Sam Lincoln, and my father, David Lincoln Jr. And my mother her Hoocak name was Sohminanka, and she lived in Minnesota. So she grew up across the river in near La Crescent and Hoka, Minnesota. And my father, David Lincoln Jr., they met in Wisconsin, but he spent his earlier years, his toddler years, in Winnebago, Nebraska. And then on the right are my grandparents. David Lincoln Sr. was also from Nebraska. And eventually he moved to Wisconsin. His mother was from Wisconsin, but his father was from Nebraska. And then that's my grandmother, Annie Lowe. her name was Wanik Shunjinka, which means red bird. And then my choka up above, behind her, his name was Wijawi. And I forgot to mention my father's name on the left side. His name, Hoocak name was, oh, what was it now? Off the top of my head, why is it escaping me? Maybe I'll get back to that. It's a harder name because actually he had two names, and sometimes that happened with a few people that they got their name when they were a baby. And then during their lifetime, something happened with them. They did something and earned another name. So he was a soldier in World War II. And so his name was Wawahaska, which means makes the enemy retreat. So that was his name. So I can't remember. I guess I gave you all the Hoocak names. So I'm glad you're with me tonight and you get a chance to see the family who raised me and taught me a lot of things that I know today that I try to carry forward. And one of the things that a lot of elders say, or even a lot of junior elders or even young people say, I wish I would have listened more closely when they were telling me things. And so that's the way I feel too, but I tried to listen as much as possible. And in fact, I even tried to eavesdrop. So if I heard them telling things to my older sister or talking to each other, I would try to catch on to things that I should and shouldn't do. And so I'd listen to what the conversations that were going on. And then the photo that on the left is my father and mother, and right behind them is a road, and it looks like it's right around Black River Falls. And the little town that we grew up in is called Millston. So I don't know, I can't see everyone's screen, but if any of you know where Millston is, feel free to tell me if you know where Millston is. Shake your head or put a little wave to me or something that you know where Millston is. So that was a real fun place to grow up, and I learned a lot. In fact, my grandmother and grandfather had a basket stand that was on Highway 12. And so a lot of what I learned about how to work with people and how to treat people was by being there with them. I was only about 3 or 4, but they had a basket stand and they would sell baskets and beadwork. And when I went out to the stand, the tourists would stop on the highway and walk across a little bridge and go and try to purchase something from my grandparents. And that was really nice to have that chance to know how to interact with people, because I had never, that was the first time I had ever seen a non-Hoocak or a non-native person. The white tourists got out of their car, came across and started to talk about buying something. And sometimes the tourists would want to talk to us, but we were too shy. So I used to overhear my grandmother and my mother talking with the tourists. So that's my first interaction. And sometimes it was kind of interesting when the tourists brought their children, because the children had never seen an Indian child before. And so they were almost scared of me. And another time they were just real curious. So they weren't very friendly in the beginning till I got older. But when it was a toddler, it seemed kind of scary. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. In my growing up years, I went to a rural school in Tomah, Wisconsin, and it was a one-room schoolhouse and they had 8 grades. And so it was a real fun experience to grow up there, because all my siblings were in classes with me, because it was a one-room schoolhouse. So it had grades 1 through 8. And so I got to be with my siblings, and the teacher was really good to us. And all our classmates were too. They treated us really well. I mean, you know, all the friendships you have in school, and no one ever talked about us being Hoocak or anything like that at all. It was just like, include us in everything, classmates, sports, everything else. So it was really fun to grow up there. And eventually in our community, my father ended up working at the VA hospital as a barber. And then my mother worked in the cranberry marshes, but she was basically a housewife. And so my grandmother and she would make a lot of baskets and the beadwork. And then we spent time learning how to do that. So this is just a picture to show you what I was like when I was about 12 or 13. And then we used to have our community Blue Wing Dance Club, and we would do performances, and we called them powwow, but they really weren't a powwow because it was more of a dance show and performance for the audience. And one year I won the princess contest, and that was in 1967 in Toma. So that I'm really glad that I have this photo, because that's one of my relatives, Lois Lincoln, who's putting the crown on me. And then on the right-hand side, that's Oscar Deer. So I don't know if any of you may be related to Oscar Deer from Toma and Wyville area. And then on the left, behind Lois and behind me is Laverne Karaman. And he was such a talkative guy, friendly, outgoing. So I had a lot of role models to show me how to behave in crowds of people, how to be more like a PR person, you know, be friendly to everyone, invite everyone in, have a smile, cheer people up. So I was lucky to have Laverne in my life. And his mom lived just down the hill from me, from us in Toma, and she was married to my choka, Albert Lowe. So I really had an enjoyable life growing up. One of the first jobs I had when I was growing up in high school was to work at the public library. There was a program called Neighborhood Youth Corps. And when they got jobs with Neighborhood Youth Corps, they would place high school kids in different programs or different departments or companies across the area. And in Toma, I ended up, first of all, at the VA hospital in the personnel office. Then I worked in the high school main office with the school superintendent. And then eventually I worked here in my junior and senior year at the public library. And so that was my first chance to really be, to help people, to be at the front desk, to check out books to people. And sometimes the librarian allowed me to do book displays. She had a real nice fireplace in the building, and then she'd have me be in charge of decorating the mantle and putting book displays up. So I enjoyed it, but never did I really think that I would be a librarian. I just did that as my job. And my parents were good guides, because what they always did was they got me to work early. I always had to be early, and then by the time I got in, then my job started. So that's a good value to have, to always be to work early, and listen to what your supervisor says and follow through. So that's the kind of lesson that I learned by working in all of the jobs that I had through Neighborhood Youth Corps. And I really had fun with it, because when I looked at my paycheck, it was from Great Lakes Intertribal Council. And then the people that were names that were on the check were Arvid Miller, who was Stockbridge Muncie, and Angelo Lemire, who was Hoocak. So I was just really excited to see that there were Indian people being able to fund programs like that. And prior to that, it was just like, we were the only Indian family in our little school. And so we felt like the only ones, till I got there and knew that other people were doing good things to help students become leaders. So this is a photo from what was going on at the same time. After you'll notice that this is Stand Rock Indian Ceremonial. Even while I was working at the public library during the day, at night, my father and my family would drive down to the Dells, and at night we would dance at Stand Rock. So this is what they called in the ceremonial program, the contest dance. So you can notice she has a gourd in her right hand, and down by her side is the fan. So sometimes you see in some of our performances, we'll see the contest dance. And you see the style that she's wearing is the buckskin. So we aren't wearing these buckskin dresses that much any longer, but I wanted to show that because the beadwork that I did when I was growing up always went with the buckskin and then maybe the headband. And even though we don't wear headbands with our traditional wawaja and our outfits, that's what we wore at Stand Rock. Then to give you a clue to something else on my life growing up, if you look in that back row behind her, there's Jim Smoke with a headdress on. He was the master of ceremonies, Chief Daybreak, they called him. But that was Jim Smoke, and that's how I knew him. But you see the little one that is sitting there? That's me. And next to me on my left is my father, David Lincoln Jr. So I just need to say a few things right now about that. I did some beading at that time. We had it at the Dallas Park Indian Village. I did beadwork there. And my mother showed me, and my grandmother showed, well, it was actually my mother showed me how to make rings so that we could sell them at the basket stands. But my brother was really little. He was only 3 years old. And so sometimes he would come down with my father and dance. And then other nights, then I would dance. So we would rotate. So he would bring us down there and we would dance with him. So that's me in the boys' regalia. So back around in those years, in the late 1950s, young girls could got permission, like I got permission from the veterans to dance in little boys style. So in fact, the very first time we had some community activities when I was growing up is they were going to have some a birthday party, and they decided to have a dance and get the drum out. And so they said, oh yes, some of the elders said, let's have a contest dance. So my nanny and my older sister were coaching me in the little chiporoke, and they said, okay, when the drum starts up, get out there, and this is what you do. Put your arms like this, and that's called oahi. You got to go do that when it's your turn. And then when all the little children got out there to dance, I didn't dance sideways on the little girl style. I started dancing in the boy style and spinning around and fancy dancing. And anyway, I got first place. And I was a little girl dancing in the boys style, and I got first. So that kind of was my incentive to keep on dancing. And because my parents allowed it and no one said, don't do that, that's what I did. And so at our little dances in the community as a little child, I would dance in boys' regalia. And when we got to Pipe Dyer's Indian Village, there were lots of other young girls my age and maybe a little younger, and they were wearing wawajas for the tourists. And then my grandmother made me one and made my little sister one. And so we started dancing sideways like the girls. And so I had so many other girls to dance with that it was really fun and easy. So I learned to do that, and I love that too. So that's just a little background to you on remembering your culture, keeping that with you, and some of the ways that our parents and our grandparents love us, and they show us different ways of remembering our culture and being respectful to one another. After I left there, I eventually went to college. So one of the things that was really helpful from working at Stand Rock was that we had a director named Jack Gray. And Jack Gray wanted to promote education. So he said, any high school kid that is going to graduate and wants to go to college, we'll hire them to dance during the summer so they can earn money for college, for their spending money and clothing and all of that. So when I danced there, I think they picked me because I was going to go to college. And I love to dance anyway. So that was one thing that got me going. And once I got to college, I found that no one really knew much about Indian people. And in fact, everyone was really nice. My college roommates and my classmates at college, they would say, oh, I've never met an Indian before. Nice to meet you. And they would ask lots of questions, not like high school. High school, they never asked me anything. But at college, everyone was so friendly and they had questions. So what I tried to do is incorporate cultural knowledge, whatever I had, what little I knew, I tried to use that when I had writing assignments or any kind of work that I was doing in some of my courses. I tried to add that in, or I tried to go to the library and find out more, because my parents and grandparents didn't tell me everything. So maybe something was in the books. So I tried to go in and look for some other cultural knowledge to put into my term papers. And then the other thing that I did was to stay involved in tribal communities. And the reason I put tribal community / communities is that once I got to college, my best friends were from other tribes. I mean, I had Ho-Chunk friends too, but I got to meet Oneidas and Menominees and Ojibwe people. So it was really fun getting to know them. So I stayed involved, going back home almost every weekend and staying involved in our culture and community activities. So I really enjoyed that, being able to come home and staying involved, because sometimes it got really lonely at college campuses. And so I had to come home. And then the classmates, the Ho-Chunk ones, we always had fun together. And we hardly ever had classes together, but it was good to see each other on campus or to study together. So that's what I enjoyed. And then eventually, after I graduated and got my degree, I met my husband in college, and we got married after college, and we started raising a family. And I know that some of you will do that too. And then there were other college kids who already came, they called them returning adult students. And a lot of the families that came, they might have one or two children, and then the children went to the public schools, and then the parents were students as well. So at night, the parents were studying, and so were the kids. And it was a lot of work for the mom, because the mom had to cook and all of that, and then make sure everybody was dressed and ready, and everybody studied and got their work done. So it's a lot of juggling when you have a family and try to go to school. So I applaud any mom or dad that's going to school and raising a family, because it's a lot of work. And then that last point I have down there is bicultural living in the work world and in the Ho-Chunk world. So, and I'm saying bicultural because you have to be in two worlds, your culture and the non-natives culture. So you have to walk in both. And in the Ho-Chunk world. And I know some people have trouble once they get to campus to try to be in one culture or another. And one of the things that elders always said is, well, you'll go to campus, you go to college, but you'll never be a white person. I mean, that's what I heard my elders saying. Okay, you can go and you can learn from them, but you'll never be white. And that's so true, because you get there and you are always reminded that you're Ho-Chunk or you're another tribe and you're different for some reason. So I always used it to my advantage. In fact, some professors even told me, oh, you're an Indian, you're never going to make it. And so instead of being downhearted and going home, instead I'd say, oh yeah, I'll show you, and I'll stay here and I'll stick with it. And then I'd figured like, well, once I finish, I'll go back and tell them, look, I finished, hi, I finished. But that was just a joke, because I needed some incentive for me to want to finish. And even though I could have used it as a reason to quit, I used it as a reason for a challenge. Like, oh yeah, you think I'm not going to make it? I'll show you. So that's why I tried to stick with it. And all my intertribal friends and my Ho-Chunk friends really helped me a lot. We helped each other study. We shared notes. Sometimes we would type. We didn't even have computers and laptops then. We had these old clunky typewriters, and we would type for each other. And we had to type all night. So if a paper was due on Wednesday, Tuesday night, we would be typing all night. Sometimes I would type till midnight, and then my friend would type from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. and wake me up. And then I would type from 3 a.m. to 5. And then I would have my assignment turned in, my paper. So that's what we did for each other. We helped each other. So some of that hard work, be sure, and when you're in school, to check in with your friends. And I had a lot of non-native friends in high school too, and we did the same thing. We got to school early. We went to study hall. What did you get for this one? Did you work on this? What did you get? And then we'd share ideas and information. So we helped one another. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to check in with someone. And I'm just showing this as college life because I wanted to have some images of myself in college. But when I was in college, whoever thought of taking a picture of ourselves? We didn't have cell phones. We couldn't do selfies. So I just have some images of some of my friends and my relatives that are in college. So behind them is the campus, the buildings, the libraries. But when you're there, it's important not to forget who you are, where you came from. You'll be having to hit the books and find books on different cultures and your own, maybe some things on different tribes. It piles up, but it's really enjoyable. Take it one step at a time. Don't look at it and say, wow, that pile is too high. Just take that first book off the top, open it up and work with it. Don't look at the full picture. Look at what's in front of you and you can finish. And then I put the beaded moccasins down there because, you can't forget where you came from. Your relatives can do your work for you. Sometimes they'll give you something to take to campus for you, just as a remembrance and a reminder of who you are and where you're from, and that they love you and they want you to finish. In fact, sometimes I would come home and the elders, I would tell them, oh, I'm so tired. I feel like I don't want to go back. I don't think I can finish. And these would be the senior citizens. They would say to me, no, don't quit. We need you to stay there. When you finish, you got to come back and help the people. So they are the ones who also help me too. So be sure when you get home to turn to your elders and let them know that, gee, I feel like, I don't know if I can do this assignment. And next thing you know, they're going to tell you, you can do it. I know you can. Look at this. You'll be able to do it. So be sure and look for all those people that can advise you and help you to do your best. One of the things that happened to me is that when I was working on my bachelor's degree, they told me I had to have a minor. I had wanted to be a teacher and I thought I wanted to be a Phi Ed teacher. That's why I went to lacrosse. I loved sports. So I thought, oh, I'll be a Phi Ed teacher. And I was going for my education degree. And 1 year, the counselor said, okay, now it's time to declare your major. What? Oh, no, declare your minor. I said, what's a minor? And so they said, it's a focus area. So I chose, I didn't know what to pick. I didn't have a favorite topic or anything. So this guidance counselor said, how about librarianship? And I said, librarianship? I didn't even know that was a career. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I worked at the library in high school. Maybe that would work. So I said, yeah, okay. So I signed up for it. Next thing you know, that became my minor. And eventually when I got my bachelor's degree, I had a degree in education and my minor was library science. And so I was going to be a school librarian to be a teacher. And so I knew a lot about Indian books and all the children's books. So I really enjoyed that. But then once I got done with college, there were no jobs in the schools. So I ended up in a public library. So if you look at the two buildings that are there on the screen, the bottom one is Oneida Community Library. So I ended up working actually in Wausau at Marathon County Public Library, and I was an advisor. I was a library consultant for 10 counties there, and I got to work with a couple of tribes while I was there, Mole Lake and Sagaugan Chippewa up there, and then the Potawatomi people up at Crandon. So I really enjoyed it while I worked there. And then for the Ho-Chunk communities, Wisconsin Rapids, there were people at Nakusa and Port Edwards, Pittsville, Arpin, all these small towns, and I got to be a library consultant for those communities. So I had a fun time. And so I met a lot of people that eventually became what you see right there, culture keepers. And so when I was traveling around in my library career, we had what we called culture keepers. We felt like the librarian has the books about the Indian tribes, and then the archivist pulls together the tribal records and arranges those so that we can have stories from our own voice, the voices of our Ho-Chunk people and all other tribes. And then the museum or a cultural center, those were really important too. So we considered the museum curator, the archivist, and the librarian the culture keepers. So in some ways, you know, that's what kept me going, knowing that I was doing something to promote culture. I was doing something to save something that's important to us. And then also the books that were already created were things to help others have a record of our lives and learn from one another. So that was a really enjoyable experience for me. I also belong to American Indian Library Association. And like I told you, I started out in school librarianship. So I have a bunch of favorite books, and we also have lots of books that are being recommended now from all different tribes. And so, Sharice Davids's book is one of my favorites for the little children, Big Voice. So I just showed that book jacket for you because there are a lot of other books out there, but not very many on the Ho-Chunk people. So I'm really glad that she got this book published. And then there's this other book right here. That's just another example of a children's book. There are all different levels. There's some for middle school and high school as well. And then there's also graphic novels too. So there's really a lot of places that you can go if you want to get books about Indian people. The place I tend to go to when I'm not sure of something, I always go to Debbie Reese's website on American Indian children's literature. And so if you ever want to go there, that's where you would find more information on all the books that I just mentioned and more. And she has critiques and she tells you what books not to choose, because some non-native wrote a book and they, you know, didn't do a very good job of portraying Indian people. So she'll let you know that kind of stuff too. So that's the URL address down below. So if you want to write that down, that's a place that you can go if you want to look for books. And I think even the high school books are really good. You know, young adult books, they're really good for even people that are after you graduate from high school, all the way up to maybe, you know, late 20s or early 30s. Even though it says young adult, the topics are really appropriate for that age group. So be sure and go there if you want to look at books that are going to be helpful about Indian culture. Speaking of Ho-Chunk, this is one of my favorite books. I got it way back in the 1990s, but I only read a little snippet. And then because of COVID-19, I was stuck at home. I couldn't do anything. And I found her book. And so I don't know if any of you have read her book, but it is so good. It's so short. Each of the chapters are really short, and a lot of my relatives are listed in there. And some of you, your relatives might be in there because it's talking about the area just north of La Crosse, Trempealeau, Bryce's Prairie, Hunter's Bridge, Onalaska, La Crosse, across the river in Minnesota where my mom grew up. So it's really, it's got a lot of good short stories. It's also got stories about Tomah and Wyville, Valley Junction, Black River, but it's mainly focusing on Black River, Trempealeau area and Onalaska and Bryce's Prairie. So there's a lot of good history in there and lots of Ho-Chunk humor in there too. So it also has genealogy and some of the values that we hold dear to us as Ho-Chunk people that's in this book and genealogy. So check that one out in your library if you get a chance, or buy it on Amazon. Here's another book about a Ho-Chunk person. And you might recall some of you that before we were called Hoocak in the 1994, we were known as Winnebago. So all the old maps have us listed as Winnebago. And then some of the books that are about us call us Winnebago people. And this is Angel Decora. She was an artist and she got her degree at a women's college out east. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now, but then she became an art teacher at Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania. And this is a book about her life. And it's really good because she also gives genealogy. And what I used to do when I was a kid, I used to skip the preface in the introduction in the beginning, and I would just start with chapter 1. But I have learned when you get an American Indian book or a Hoocak book, read that introduction, read the preface, because it gives you a lot of clues on genealogy and who the people are and why they wrote the book. So I used to skip that all the time because I just wanted to jump into the book and read. But be sure to read those things because it helps you and gets a feel for who the author is. So Linda Wagner wrote this, and she's also done another book on another Winnebago person who was a movie star out in Hollywood. But this is the one that I like because she mentions our relatives in Black River Falls in her book, some of the relatives. So, and the removal and all good history and sad history as well. I thought I'd just give you a little more personal because I talked about beading and believing. You know, a lot of what you have to do is believe what your elders told you, believe in the prayers that they say for you, believe in all the encouragement they gave you, and believe in yourself, because you have a lot of non-native faculty and maybe even classmates that'll look at you like you can't make it. Like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? And so you need to remember that there's this encouragement and to believe what you've been told by your elders and to believe that you can do it, you can make it. So here's a picture of me at UW-Madison Veterans Powwow a few years back, and there I am with Josie Lee. So even though you might be on an academic campus and far away from home, there's still chances to be together with relatives and other tribes to get together and dance and share your culture. And then I also belong to the Alpha Pi Omega sorority, and that's me with some of my sisters. So that's another thing that happens is when you get to campus and you need a connection to back home, if you don't have sisters with you where you are, you can join an American Indian sorority, and you will have sisters that have some of the values that we have back home. So when you need something, you can count on them. And then there's chapters all over the nation. All across the country, there's chapters of Alpha Pi Omega. It's the first Native American Indian women sorority in the nation. So I have a lot of sisters in Wisconsin and across the country. So sometimes when I'm going somewhere like New Mexico or Arizona, I just check to see, do I have a sister there? So I'll check on her and then she'll tell me where to go, where the best spots are and all that. So they also might invite you if you're in the same career area. They might say, oh, we need you to come and speak with us, or they put you on Zoom or invite you to be at their conference. So those are the kinds of things that happen at college. You make your own family because you can't have your family with you on campus. Then you make your own family, your own sisters. And then this part shows just a few shots of remembering the beads, remembering the culture, remembering our ways. And so on the upper left, that's me and my daughter, Kiana. And it's kind of interesting because as a librarian on campus, I could be a marshal at graduation. So at commencement, when it was time to graduate, if you request it, they allow staff and faculty to wear the gowns that they wore from the school that they graduated from. So I was a marshal the year that my daughter graduated. So she didn't wear the cap and gown. She wore her Hoocak regalia, and I'm representing the university. So I've got the university kind of cap and gown situation. And then on my right, I'm at Winnebago Powwow with my my sisters and my daughter, Anne. And then I've been really lucky since that time, since I retired, to join Clan Mothers for Hoocak Nation from Social Services. So that's me down there with the Clan Mothers back in 2019. In the front row, I'm right by my daughter. Oh, my mind is drawing a blank. Myrna Thompson. I was trying to think of her Hoocak name, but I can't think of it right now. So that's me down on the second one next to her. So those are some of the things that happen in your career that you can enjoy, and librarianship can take you all kinds of places. And I still did active stuff in the community, and besides doing Hoocak related activities. This is just one example. Since I retired, the university still invited me to come back and serve on different committees. So this is from the natatorium. They're rebuilding the facility. And so Ken Lewis is helping with sculpture that's going to go up. And so these are some of the committee people. And you'll see Bill is right behind me. That's me in the pink blazer. And Bill is behind me, and Ken is wearing blue behind me. And those are some of the staff people from the natatorium that helped with the process. And Bill can tell you a little more about that. I just wanted you to see that when you retire, you're not always retired. There's always somebody calling you back to do something interesting and enjoyable. Well, iniginapuit. I'm grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. If you could go back out now and make me host once again, that'd be great. Everybody that's listening this evening, if you want to take your mics off mute and thank Janice for taking her time out this evening and speak a little bit about herself here in hopes that you guys can glean something from that. Thank you, Janice.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There, now she became a teacher, like she always wanted. Yes, Janice, there were so many things I took notes of just now, and just between the last few dozen years here by me working within our Cultural Resources Division for the tribe, I began to bump into Janice often. I think the first time I actually interacted with Janice on a formal work way was when I think we both were presenting, or did present real close to each other at the Indian Agency House over in Portage. And I think you were speaking mostly either regarding the historic periods of the removals of the Ho-Chunk people or the treaty period. And one of the things when I spoke a couple weeks ago, Janice, to some of the youth here this evening, was as I just talked about the brief history of the Ho-Chunk and just touched upon the tips of those icebergs of history that we take all the way back to the, far back to the last glacier episodes. And when I get to the historic periods of the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s, and even the 1900s, and even to this day, there's so much information, even in those few periods of times there, that it's just impossible for us to learn it all. And the most eloquent speaker, that I hear are those that stay specific on their topic, and they talk about one thing and they know it real well. In fact, they don't even need to use their notes at times, but they have notes there in case they get sidetracked. I mean, those speakers, that is something that you learn, through time. And it goes back to what I saw a message or in the chat there that Ryan had made note of. It's those soft lessons, those soft skills that you learn growing up from your peers and your elders around you, and those things that will take you all the way through life. And that's what you have to continue to keep in mind is, what am I spending my valuable time and resources learning that I can use later on in life? Don't fill, the mind full of stuff that you'll never use again, or it becomes antiquated and don't use. And one of the things I had noted was, and when Janice was talking about, her turning the situation around, going out there into the big world out there, and that some people saying, "Oh, you can learn to be white, but you'll never be white." and turning that around and taking it upon, and making it to her advantage, that it became a challenge, and that is the one thing that you have to do in life, no matter what walk of life you are pursuing, or what you're doing, is you have to understand that being Native American, or being, a certain culture, or being Hoocak, this is a great advantage to us, that we have a core community and networking that you want to take advantage of, that no other communities out there today really has. They're always looking to destroy their history and take on something new, whereas we're trying to retain our history and culture to keep us who we are, because we know we have got through thousands of years, and this is what's going to perpetuate us in the future as people. So keep that in mind, that you have a great advantage over other people. Then with that in mind, once you learn something up here and you retain it, Janice mentioned that, talk to a friend once in a while. If you're going to go out to college there, touch base with the family and share your thoughts and what you're experiencing, because there's other people that needs to hear what you're learning from that process. And I thought that was just a nice way that Janice put it. And I don't want to pump Janice up too much, because I'm going to still bump into her, through the next few years too, because as she showed on those last images, although she's retired formally, she's not retired. Because you still need that her as an asset out there in the university system alone, standing next to those potential future, emblems or items of our clans, in the University of Madison. We'll think about that. If you'd have thought about that about 30 years ago, that would have been unheard of. Yet the nations within Wisconsin and even in the US are making great strides in higher education now, because they know and they desire to have what we have had all along. They want that. So, and that's what you have to keep in mind. So that said, we're getting close to the end here. If you guys want to put a few questions into the chat that you could ask Janice, that's great. I'm going to save those notes too. We can always respond back to you if you have any questions. I mentioned one to somebody there talking a little bit about naming and knowing the people who got their names from that. I've got an individual I work with, George Garver, and I put a lot of stuff over onto him. But call him, Monday through Thursday, and ask him if you need any direction regarding, the possibility of how naming processes take place. The best resources and process to do that. There's a lot of things you can ask above and beyond what's being presented. Now, I'm not saying don't listen to the people talking and fill the chat with a whole bunch of stuff, but go ahead, and if you have any questions that last week that you're going to notice within these activities, week 10, the title of that is going to be everything you wanted to know but were afraid to ask. And that whole hour is going to be basically dedicated towards you folks, the children here and the families there. If there's anything that you ever need to know, and if we can't answer it, we'll find the resource that will get that answer to you. So that last week should be interesting. And we stop at week 10 for this course here, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue to communicate above and beyond that as well. Again, Janice, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know it was a little hectic there starting out there, and it always is. Nobody is good at this, a lot except for Ryan. Ryan came; he can always solve everything on my issues here too, hopefully too. Ryan, I'll go out on a limb and say I saved it to the cloud this time, and so you'll get a copy of this evening's presentation a lot quicker than the last few weeks there too. So that said, I think I'll log off here now. I'll leave it on for a few minutes here if you want to go ahead and put a few questions in there. Thank you, folks, for being very patient with us. It's a learning curve for me as well. The first time I've ever tried hosting an event here with more than 2 or 3 people from my staff. So there we go. So, okay, everybody take care. It's 8 p.m. and everybody go. Ryan, you have?
Yeah, before we jump off, sorry about that. There was a question or a couple questions that came up in the comments. The first one is, are there more books about Hoocak arts? Janice, do you?
I don't know. Am I on?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I don't know if there's, I think there might be maybe one more maybe, but there's more workshops. In fact, Little Eagle Arts Foundation, we sponsor a lot of workshops and even activities, events, but we haven't written books. So there's Truman Lowe's books too, though. So Truman has done a couple of books, and then I think Tom Jones is working on one, and they all collaborated on People of the Big Voice. So, but I guess I would kind of consider photography art, but if you're talking about the more of the beadwork, the crafts and that kind of thing, we haven't really done that. But other types of art, I think there might be some articles that are in journals on campus, but not necessarily a book. So were you thinking of were the books printed and that you can check out from the library? Is that what you were?
It was, let me see here, Adrian that asked that question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there really aren't that many. If it's specifically on Hoocak,
Just books.
just books, okay.
I should, if you don't mind, mention that one of the notes I did take on here was that, Janice mentioned, don't be scared to look for Native communities within colleges, for example, and sororities and clubs. Madison, for example, has the Long Chip Group, and I made a note here that you'll oftentimes find that you are one of just a little, any Ho-Chunk in the community at times, and so maybe you are the person that people are looking for, and that take it upon yourself to create a club. You be the person to begin that process, and this kind of falls over into that writing stage. We are in desperate need, the Ho-Chunk people here, and creating writers out there and people that have the ability to become great artisans, and I think it's week 7 or 8. We're having 2 artisans on here, both the organizer of Leaf as well as Christopher Sweet. So we're going to have Melanie and Christopher on here together, sitting on a panel talking for 1 short hour about their life and times as artisans, Ho-Chunk artisans here. Hopefully we can glean more information from those 2 as well. And this goes all the way back to that first week. I asked if there's anything you'd like to see, and someone did put it in the chat over here that they would like to see more information about Ho-Chunk artistry. So we'll be looking forward to that. If there's anything else that somebody really wants us to focus on, we're very pliable here, and we can focus that last week on that as well too. So.
And then Steve had a question. I actually put the links to the first 2 sessions or classes, the presenters, in the chat right now. And those links, these are private for just the students that are and families that are part of this. So if you save those links, that will take you to those videos of the presentations. And then I believe there's another question that came in on the Native Reading link. Do they post more books whenever they find some? And Janice, I put the link to the American Indian Children's Literature blog that you had in your presentation. So I put a link there. They're just asking if they continue to update that, which I assume they would.
Yeah, it's a blog, so it's updated frequently. So that one is for sure.
And one other resource out there too, beside books, then, which is great. We have many within Wisconsin and Iowa, and even in other states that we've been in, Minnesota, for example, during the historic periods for the removals. There's a lot of research material. I shouldn't say a lot. There's research material out there if you use keywords such as, Winnebago or Ho-Chunk or removals and or La Ponce, we're known as to the French as the Ponce. If you put those keywords into search engines online, you can find many historical societies out there that has information that speaks relatively, pretty direct about the Ho-Chunk during those periods of times or whatever interest that you're looking on there. It's fun to do research as it is, for me at least. And if you do a specific on our people, you can go down many a rabbit hole out there. But from that, you gain little tidbits and insights of history about our own people. So there was another one here. My mom said she is reading the autobiography of the Winnebago Indian by Paul Radin. Said it's pretty good, and it is. There's a lot of information, and you got to read in between the lines. Some of it is fairly accurate, and some of them isn't so accurate. So you have to kind of take it within, a context of how it was written. The same as some of the early anthropologists and historians around Wisconsin, Charlie E. Brown, and a few others over there. They would often pull aside some whole chunks of their periods of time there and wine and dine them, or give them, something of value there, and they'd gain information. Oftentimes that information was incomplete, but it's information just the same. And so if there's information that you find about the Hoocak, you can always contact us in Culture Resources, and we'll come back to you rather quickly whether or not that information is something that's quite accurate, less than accurate, or not accurate at all. So there's a lot of misinformation out there too, so you have to kind of be careful of that.
It would be really nice for us to collaborate on different books that we think would be good for families and children to look at, and have our own little database of not only books specific about Hoocak people, but also written by Hoocak people. I think that'd be a nice thing for us to compile and have available, so we can send those out. And we'll continue to look, myself and Leslie, try to see what we can do. We'll collaborate with Bill, maybe even be able to reach out to Janice and get some input from her as well.
Yeah,
we can send that out to all the participants.
I noticed Paula Cleveland is on here as well, and she's our Cultural Resource Division archivist. And I'm not that she needs to speak or anything about here, but one of our duties with our Cultural Resource Division is take a book that speaks about Native Americans or Hoocak in general and everything, and find what is accurate in there, and we'll highlight that and tag it in that book. And you'll find snippets in each book. You won't find a full dedicated book about our culture anywhere. And I think in part our ancestors did that to protect us. They safeguarded a lot of that information in for fear that we wiped off the face of the earth. They took it all away from us, and that was that adage back then. And we have to be so much safeguarded as it is yet today with certain things, but basic knowledge out there is hard to come by right now. So, okay, anything else, Ryan?
Just the last thing I was going to mention is journaling your experiences, the presenters and their stories, just putting a couple notes down of what you thought was important, that you liked. I'll try to list some questions that you can answer for yourself, and this will all help at the end with your reflection paper. A part about completing the entire course is that basically everyone is set up for the incentive, and that incentive is when you complete all the courses and hand in your material at the end, which is that reflection paper or video, you'll be receiving a piece of artwork from a Hoocak artist in our area. And we have a few already on board, and I'm really excited about the other ones that we're working with. So just remember to stay on track with all your courses, and at the end, hand it in that reflection paper. And that's all I have for tonight.
All right. Thank everybody for showing up here. I'll look forward to, I'll get something out early next week for the next week's activity. Then we're finally solidifying the activities as they're rolling in here. So, okay, we'll see you guys all next week then. Take care, guys. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao,
Good
ciao.
night.
Good night now.
Bye. Bye.